could mean that at the top of the next cycle, in let's say 2025, 2026, you could be looking at like a $1.5 million Bitcoin price.
Boa noite, pessoal, bem-vindos a mais uma Crypto Night com o Surfista Crypto e hoje temos o prazer de ter no canal Brandon Green. Brandon Green é um OG do espaço e eu vou deixar que ele se apresente. Rapaziada, a live vai ser em inglês, portanto se tiverem dificuldade ponham as legendas automáticas em inglês que o YouTube já vos permite fazer isso. Portanto, hello Brandon, welcome to the channel. I'm very glad you can make it. Tell our audience about you. How long are you in the space? When was your first contact with Bitcoin? And feel free to grab a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started in the space in early 2017. And, I really straight out of college joined Bitcoin Magazine and, started as an intern. I've been working there for the past 6.5 years, just learning all about Bitcoin, all the different companies, all the different people, meeting them, getting into their stories. In 2019, helped kind of found and create the Bitcoin conference, which is, the largest Bitcoin or crypto conference in the world, in the US. And, I've been focused on that ever since, like really being able to, tell Bitcoin's story and create the biggest meeting place for Bitcoiners in the entire world.
So I was just checking your Twitter account. By the way, Brandon is the head of the next Bitcoin Amsterdam, the conference that it's coming on 12 and 13 of October, right? 12 and 13. So you have a promo code, surfistacrypto, if you want to go, 10% off. So tell me, I was just checking your Twitter. I think I read something like it's time to build. I think it's bear markets are the best time for building the infrastructure that can take the next billion people on space. So we are thinking drive chains, maybe DeFi coming to Bitcoin, ordinals. Tell me your take about that. What do you think? It's the new thing. It's the great new thing on Bitcoin?
Yeah, so, I think that two very different topics, right? Ordinals and then drive chains. I think on the drive chain side, it's been an interesting exercise, both in, how will changes be made to Bitcoin moving forward now that we've had kind of the Taproot and SegWit soft forks. Those were two, very popular, everyone kind of chalked it up as something that was going to happen in Bitcoin type of improvements, and now it's completely a wild west in terms of whether there will ever be another soft fork in Bitcoin. So it's been an interesting exercise to see how consensus is made in Bitcoin moving forward. The kind of undercurrent of the drive chain conversation has been this BIP 119 covenants improvement. And, there's a couple of really cool projects, especially ARC, which a lot of people have been talking about, that, would be able to leverage something like a BIP 119 and build a lot of really cool new applications and protocols on Bitcoin using that. So, the drive chains conversation was interesting, not one that I had leaned into a lot. The ordinals conversation has been also fascinating. And, I would actually lump ordinals and RGB into kind of a similar world, which is how do you create assets on Bitcoin, right? Non-Bitcoin BTC assets that leverage the security of the Bitcoin blockchain. And so, ordinals is one kind of implementation of that. That had a lot of usage and people piling on through kind of the NFT world. And it's been very cool to see a lot of crypto NFT people move to Bitcoin, bring their transaction fees on Bitcoin, help secure the network, bring more activity to Bitcoin. All of that's great, right? It doesn't violate the consensus protocol. It doesn't violate anything that anyone's node says is a rule. And, it just helps keep the network secure. So, it's an interesting development on Bitcoin. And then on the flip side, RGB is a kind of meta protocol that's just recently become stable client-side validation in order to create like a much more private infrastructure for creating assets on Bitcoin. And so, that's a conversation that really hasn't even kicked off yet, but it's one that I think is going to continue to grow over the next year or so.
Okay. And talking about the building on top of the consensus layer of Bitcoin, do you think we can expect the smart contracts coming to Bitcoin getting on the level of the Ethereum smart contracts?
I think we can build them better than the Ethereum smart contracts. I think that Ethereum has a lot of vulnerabilities and perverse incentive mechanisms built into their layer one consensus mechanism because of how the smart contracts work on that layer one. And I think that Bitcoin can do better than that. I was just talking internally with some folks, and one of the cool things about RGB is it's much more private than what Ethereum has. And so instead of someone being able to go click on your wallet and see every single asset that you own on Bitcoin, with RGB they wouldn't be able to see that. They would only be able to see the zero knowledge proofs that something, some RGB type transaction occurred, but that sort of history wouldn't be readily available for them. So yeah, I think it's something that's coming. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that like the specific tokens or assets that we've seen on Ethereum are particularly useful or valuable or, something that I would want to be investing in personally. But it opens the door for that tooling and for, future innovations to come through that may be valuable and may have real world kind of value to people. And I'd much rather see that activity happen on Bitcoin than on some other cryptocurrency that isn't as decentralized, isn't as widely adopted, distributed, etc. So I think it's a great thing.
Amazing, great insights from you, Brandon. Tell me one more thing. Jay, let's change the topic a little bit. Jay Powell, I want to talk about your mind-blowing predictions of Bitcoin, but after that, Jay Powell is still spooking the market, meeting after meeting after meeting. We don't expect liquidity to come to market in the next several months, maybe even until the halving. Do you think that can impact the halving and the price of Bitcoin until and after the halving? That flawless on liquidity on the markets.
Yeah, so we're in a weird period in Bitcoin's life where Bitcoin behaves both as a, in my opinion, anyway, it behaves as a uncorrelated asset that is impacted by its own internal, clockwork. So things like the halving, like transaction fees coming to Bitcoin, all sorts of innovations happening, like the ordinals or RGB assets, et cetera. Like all of those things can bring activity and value to the network that affects the Bitcoin price. At the same time, there is also a macro environment that Bitcoin is intersecting with. And one thing that I would like to kind of delineate is that wasn't always the case. So in 2017, when I got in, if anyone was trying to compare the current, Fed policy rate to the price of Bitcoin around then, like it would have been laughable. Like it was too small. There weren't these giant institutions trading the asset. It's not like people were viewing it as part of some broad economic portfolio. People were just viewing the idea of Bitcoin and believing in it and buying it, right? And so, this is a transition in kind of Bitcoin's identity. And so what that means is that I think that there are like two bullish catalysts in the wings that haven't happened yet. Number one is that we cannot keep kind of the current monetary policy the way that it is for much longer, right? Like I know there's a lot of people calling for the higher for longer, but you're starting to see the cracks in the foundation of the global economic system. You're seeing problems with China's economy. You're seeing credit issues in the U.S. Like there's a lot of underlying, simmering sort of issues that are starting to bubble up. And so those are going to force, a monetary policy course change in the U.S., which will then trickle through kind of the entire world. And then number two is the halving, like you said. Bitcoin's own internal clockwork is going to change. It's going to become more scarce. There's not going to be as much sell pressure on every block of miners covering their energy costs in order to mine Bitcoin. And so because of that, like we've seen for the three other halvings that have already happened, Bitcoin's going to go on its own, bull run just based on that. And so both of those things coinciding together could lead to some real rocket fuel over this next cycle, where we could see, a pretty massive move in the Bitcoin price very soon.
So tell us now, what's your expectations for the people who hasn't heard about it before? What's your expectation for your Bitcoin prediction price for 2030?
I truly believe that Bitcoin still can follow a 100x from the bottom style boom bust cycle. So call it every 4 years, you go through a massive bubble, and then you draw down 85% or something like that. I don't think there's any reason to expect that behavior to change drastically. And so, if you're going to say in the next, what was the bottom of this past cycle? Let's say 100 or 15,000, right? So 100x from the bottom of 15,000 could mean that at the top of the next cycle, in let's say 2025, 2026, you could be looking at like a $1.5 million Bitcoin price. I don't think that's that insane. It feels insane saying it right now, but just look at what Bitcoin's done in the past. It's very similar. And so, I would say that the caveat is kind of what we just talked about. Bitcoin's behaving both as a macro asset and its own kind of uncorrelated asset. And so a world in which you're seeing $1.5 million Bitcoin prices that soon, I think is a world in which you're seeing the value of the US dollar significantly change as well. And so 1.5 million may not be what 1.5 million used to be, right? That being said, I don't think that that's a crazy situation. And, it really just kind of takes a couple of these key things happening. Bitcoin retaking its throne in the crypto market and kind of sucking up all the value and liquidity from other cryptos back to Bitcoin is a huge driver of that, as well as, things like the Bitcoin ETF in the US, seeing true institutional adoption come in the form of like BlackRock having one of their main asset offerings, one of their main structured products be a Bitcoin product. That can lead to tons of money piling into Bitcoin in a moment where, inflation could be, expansion of the into money supply could be taking off. And so I think it's all kind of you almost have to wonder if Satoshi in 2009 just had a crystal ball and just knew exactly how to make this thing succeed. So, it is crazy. It is crazy.
Lately, we have hearing the news about aliens, and it's trending, speaking about aliens nowadays. And that theory that aliens check our nuclear power plants and they avoid the nuclear conflict. In our channel, I have a thesis that that maybe that same species come down here and give us a gift for a retarded monetary policy that we had. So come on, guys, take this and level up yourselves. Just joking, but that's our thesis. We have another thesis here on the channel as well, that we think that what will drive the mass adoption, it's the third world economies where central banks have the most policies that, they keep printing and printing and printing and printing. Argentina, like Lebanon, Nigeria. We think that the people there are starting using without a system that tell them to use it. They are getting an edge on Bitcoin or seeing an edge on Bitcoin. What do you think it's the spark we need to see the fully mass adoption and the end of the adoption curve coming?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I also want to hit on the alien topic as well, but we'll jump into that in a second. I would say that the number one marketing tool, quote unquote, for Bitcoin is the Bitcoin price. And so, to some extent, like more users cause the price to go up, but also the price going up causes more users to adopt, right? And so I think that, we tend to see a close to like a 10x in terms of the adoption of Bitcoin through every cycle. Obviously, it was a little bit crazier in the first couple of cycles, but if we say that we have 100 million Bitcoin users right now globally, I don't think that that's too far off from the number. And so I would expect in the next cycle maybe to hit 1 billion users. Somewhere around 1/7 of the total global population could be using Bitcoin, at least having some exposure to it. So I don't think that that's crazy. And where do you see that coming from? 100%. You see that coming from places where there's a real use case for Bitcoin outside of just the speculation, outside of just the price going up. And those are these third world, emerging markets where the currency isn't as stable. And, they just kind of need to be exposed to some of the ideas of Bitcoin, as well as really easy technology for them to use it. And the incentives will do the rest. So I really do think that we'll see emerging markets more and more flock to Bitcoin as a much more stable form of, an economic tool for them to use than whatever their specific currency is. To your point about aliens, just real quick, because I love talking about this kind of stuff too. I would posit two things. Number one is that I can't imagine an alien species coming to the world, the Earth, from a system in which there is a fractured, economics. Imagine aliens come here and there's like a China and a US and an India, and, all that stuff on their planet, right?
Yeah.
That would be such a strange concept that they're not coming as like a unified group, right? And so it's surely like they're not coming with their own specific, economic tool that they're interacting with for commerce. They don't even all interact with in the same way themselves. And so, one thing that I would kind of postulate is that a Bitcoin-like currency is a prerequisite for a civilization becoming a spacefaring species, right? Like, in order to go colonize other planets, you first have to have a common economic system on your home planet, right? And so Bitcoin seems to be like the best candidate for us here, because ultimately China is not going to adopt the US dollar monetary system, or Russia is not going to adopt the US monetary system in the same way that the US wouldn't adopt their monetary system, right? And so there's got to be some neutral currency that everyone can use, and Bitcoin is the obvious choice there. So that's number one. And then number two is that proof of work Bitcoin mining actually holds in it the incentives to colonize other planets, to kind of become a spacefaring species. And it sounds weird, but the reason behind that is if Bitcoin continues to be incredibly valuable, and then the mining
energy
activities on Bitcoin, yes, continue to be, to grow exponentially in terms of how much energy that they're using, then at some point, the economics make sense to go build a massive nuclear substation on the moon or on Mars and use it to just mine Bitcoin. And it's super simple.
Yeah.
And when that happens, now you've got bountiful energy up there. So then you can use that to start your actual civilization to be able to, produce food and all the other things that you kind of need in order to actually put a colony somewhere else. So I have kind of a gut feeling that that's going to be maybe a couple decades down the line, but something that we actually look at doing as kind of a species.
Yeah, I can see Bitcoin as a peacemaking tool as well. Because if the governments around the world depend on Bitcoin for infrastructures, for medicine, for schools, they will not spend it on wars. They make war because they can print it. If they can print it, they won't be spending. If any central bank is printing money, why should we spend our money on guns, on wherever, So great talk with you. Love to chat with you. Hope to see you in Amsterdam. I'll be there for the whole week. That week I will be there the whole week there.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's it. I hope everyone have enjoyed this talk and I will shift now for Portuguese. Rapaziada, espero que tenham gostado aqui do conteúdo com o Brandon. Foi denso, o papo foi Crypto Talk degenerado. Portanto, deixem aquele likeão, considerem subscrever-se no canal se é a primeira vez que cá estão e foi.